you exploit the density model with, Phoebe solve, that sort of thing, right? But you got drilling platforms coming. You've got the engineering complexes finally arriving. All of those change the economic model. All of those change mineral values. Drilling platforms are going to have a huge effect on the baseline economy, just because you're going to take something that's a passive thing and you're going to make it an active thing, right? At least I assume so. We don't actually have all the details on drilling platforms, even the CSM yet. But it's pretty obvious that CCP has been thinking about active goo harvesting now for a long time. So you're going to add that baseline M3 logistical gathering to the baseline null economy, which right now is essentially just mining, right? There's no other activity besides maybe PI that you see, an effort-isk ratio of people's effort, that has infinite respawns, essentially, that can just keep mining things. Well, add goo to that and prices are going to change. And the question is going to be, what ratios does CCP go with on goo to minerals? And that's going to determine all, future economic, issues from null to high sec and vice versa for the next couple of years, if they screw that ratio up. Internally, we think they're probably going to mess it up a little, but to be fair, sticking that landing is going to be pretty hard. If they get close, it'll be fine. But we're already seeing the dynamic of null mean everyone's mining. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've got systems with like 60,000 rats killed in 24 hours, so ratting is happening as well. But mining is the new hotness because it scales. It's something that is very easy for people to get into. It's something that we're going to be able to have alphas do very easily. It's definitely something that promotes density and teamwork. And if you warp into an anomaly or a belt or whatever with 30 skiffs in it or hulks or whatever, you're going to die if you try to gank those people, because the drone alone will just sodomize you, right? So you see this kind of herd economy developing. ECs are going to feed into that. You're going to be able to see tax rates that were unthinkable in null. We already see this now with our current citadels, where we have more income now. And this is going to be a little opposite thing. We have 50% more income already than we had in deck. And we haven't even rebuilt our economy fully yet. Like it's not even, it's still a pale shadow of what we had in deck, and we can't even tax mining. So, economic activity breeds economic activity, right? If a guy buys something in your market, he then builds something with it, and then he puts that back on the market, you're getting, 2, 3, maybe 4 times your taxed up that logistical chain and vertical integration, right? Well, that's changing null, where you don't need a lot of space. You just need a small amount of really good space. And preferably some moons in the for the next few months. But it's changed what you need. Like it's enabling people to actually live in null, produce in null, make null their home without importing as much from Jita. You're starting to see that really start to change, and it's going to be good for the future of Eve. I think you're going to start seeing these cities in null and economies in null that were never really possible for due to mechanics.
Yeah, and that's really what I've been quite impressed by. But the whole way that it's been rolled out, and it seems as if it's really hard to predict anything. And of course, we're working on existing stockpiles and stuff, so we're not really getting the right numbers yet. It's felt as if every time I was trying to do some serious form of prediction, there was a new variable that was just kicked out from CCP, which basically made all the predictions wrong. So I've been kind of hoping someone like you or similar would comment on the bigger picture, because I can't see where we're going price-wise and the whole cycle of life thing, because it's really different, especially when all the structures are going to be rolled out, hopefully sometime next year, right?
Well, I think...
Go ahead.
I think as one of the things as well is that, as Arith was saying, mining is the new hotness, and I think there's a lot of hype about the Rorquals as well at the moment, with their amount that they can suck out per cycle. So what I was going to throw in was, do you think this will screw with the mineral market too much with the new hotness that is going to be Rorqual mining?
In the short term, absolutely. So prices are actually fairly predictable if you have a lot of data. So one of the things that we excel at is we have a data warehouse and we have years of data in it. So we can extrapolate, price projections. We can figure out models that, okay, if CCP tweaks this, this is going to happen. And really the whole secret to predicting the future in Eve is you pick the ways that CCP must fix something. And there's usually only 2, 3, 4 ways they can fix a given thing or change a given system. So you just predict what happens with all three, and then the moment you see what they're leaning towards, you can hit stuff. But as far as mining and prices, yeah, in the very short term, it's having a very depressive effect on, like, say, Zid and Mega. There's a tremendous amount of mining going on right now, and that's before battle rorquals come, which are going to be hilarious with those panic buttons. But you got to remember that come drilling platforms, you're going to have a whole reset of that baseline effort, ISK hour ratio and null, when goo presumably has to be active mined, and if that happens, it should correct much of what you're seeing. And then
is it NDA to comment on what was talked about in structures with a revamp of POCOs?
Probably. I don't know, so I'll just stay away from like anything. We don't have a lot of information beyond, say January. Like past that, it's basically just vapor.
Because a lot of criticism from players I've talked to is that it feels as if citadels are disconnected from each other, right? And the connections were promised, but we haven't heard anything more about it, like shipping things from one structure to another, and shipping from a POCO in a revamped version to structures. All these things were mentioned in the structures chat in Slack, but we've had no information about it.
Yeah, the CSM hadn't either. Like, it's one of my private wish things. I loved X3. I don't know if you guys ever heard about the X3 series, but it allowed you to connect stations to stations to stations and have these complex, logistical flows of goods being produced and output coming out and freighters picking it up. And I would love to see that need, but no, we haven't seen anything like that. I don't think they're anywhere near that. It's probably a year, I would guess, before we see something like that, because they got to get all the systems out first. And then you can start doing things like changing where SAW is anchored to and move it to Citadel type structures, things like that, before you're going to see them, connecting them. And even then, we might not see connecting even in a year.
Okay, that's great. Love the deep level questions. I wanted to ask though, how much money does the Goons have?
I don't think we've ever released our finances. Maybe we've released our income. But we're very stable.
Yeah, where are your charts?
We have an internal data warehouse. We call it RAW. And so we have like finance dashboards that show income and taxes and moon rental, like all these things. And it enables us to track, basically almost real time. It's real time wallet pooling every hour. All our income and deliverables and, what it's been, what our SRP is, what our fuel block for the alliance usage is, what our, SOV bills are. So it's basically, it's a report I made. It's like income expense, right? It's like a P&L dashboard. And so at any given time, we know what we have. So our big thing was, we've always been investors. Like, so we don't tend to keep a lot liquid. So I'll release one dirty little figure. So when this war started, we only had 2 trillion liquid because we would spend all our ISK on investments. And so we would invest things. And so what you do is, if you start running low on liquid, you just start selling off some of those investments, right? You don't, in EVE, like the big thing is, you don't ever have ISK sitting there doing nothing. Like, that's dumb. ISK should always be making more ISK. And so you keep enough to cover a few months of SRP, and then the rest you invest. And if you end up needing it, you just start to sell off some assets. And so we never even got to sell off a great deal of our assets. We're still sitting on them, which is good come drilling platforms.
Yeah, I think you're going to need all that. Well, no, you're not. It's just amazing, though, that you guys are that organized with your finances, too. I think we think of Imperium as very organized in general, but really when you look at the finance, and I don't know this, I'm just hearing it for the first time, all that is pretty amazing for a corporation or coalition. It's actually just an alliance, isn't it?
Yeah, this is just alliance. Like, we don't, I helped allies in the past, like FA, I would give them their finance dashboard, things like that, but that was at the end. This is generally just like a Goonswarm thing. Our finance department will give advice to allies if they ask, but we don't really offer it necessarily. We have a channel that we communicate advice, like what you should invest in, how EVE's developing, what are the speculation targets, what are we manipulating in the market, that given time. We post that all in a place where our private industrialists and private, market players can read it, and the allies can read it there too. So we don't really have a distinction. It's either Goonswarm Finance or everyone else. We used to kind of have a distinction, but that went by the wayside. We just kind of do us, the directorate, and then the general public, and so everyone can read it at the same time, and they go and invest. And so we just always have a running topic in the channel, like go invest in this, cash out now, whatever. And so we make a lot of people very rich, allies included.
How did the war actually affect your, like, the models themselves? You guys figured out that you guys had tens of thousands of people that could basically kick up in some way taxes, I suppose. And here comes this other model where somebody builds an exponential moneymaker, which is a gambling casino, that sort of thing. So how did you compare those two economic systems? And did you say, oh my God, they just went nuclear and we're still conventional?
No, actually, and I don't want to sound too smug about this, I'd actually been warning about that very scenario for years internally, because I am our version, I guess, of Lenny. Like, I have many, many trillions. I could do the same thing. And so I always kind of had that agenda on my own, thinking, well, what do you do at the end game when you start, having trillions to throw around and it doesn't really mean anything anymore? What would you do, right? And so we had already been kind of, or at least I had been warning, and maybe a couple other people in finance have been warning for years, like, hey, eventually, players are going to have enough wealth where war isn't ever going to be an ISK thing anymore, or at least that particular war. We need to kind of plan for that. And so I'd always, advocated for very large buffers, whatever. So I think the ISK was a factor on one side because it allowed them to have losses with impunity. But I think people think it really came down to the casinos, and it did to kick it off. But what really happened was EVE changed at the same time. So you have to remember the war started just weeks before Citadels came out. And the entire structure of Null pivoted immediately from stations and set piece battles and SOV to Citadels, where they're essentially fortresses at, at a 4-star level and above that you're really not going to kill easily. You're probably not going to want to fight on if you can avoid it if you're an attacker. But we weren't set up for that. We didn't have any, obviously. We weren't going to deploy any because no one really knew what the mechanics were like when they first came out. No one knew where you should place them. No one knew how you should fit them necessarily right off. We didn't know a lot of the mechanics around them, like a lot of the bugs that we started finding with like ESS, bubbles and stuff like that.
Could you comment on the whole thing of lack of limiting factors in EVE? That I'm feeling that it's becoming more and more easy mode, right? There's way too much raw materials lying around. There's way too much money lying around, and no one really cares. And you get gate camps with titans and things like that. I get the feeling that CCP has been making things a little bit too easy and not adding enough constraints and losses in the game. Or is it just that people have amassed so much on an individual and alliance level?
It's both. So one of my pet peeves with CCP is I hate nullifiers. I hate them. I think they're a terrible mechanic. I think that you should not be able to run a 30-person gate camp with impunity. Like, that is stupid. It promotes fits and travel setups that mean you never die. I don't like the risk aversion you see in EVE now. You got like T3 sniper fleets, things like that. Back in the day, and I hate to be like I walked uphill both ways guy, but
no, we love that.
It was attrition, right? EVE was all about the meat grinder. You would go into a war knowing you're going to lose thousands of ships. Like, you knew that. That was cool. Like, you went into a fight and everyone walked out bloody, whoever won. That doesn't occur anymore. You can have complete wipes now where like one side basically loses nothing. And that's just a shitty EVE as far as I'm concerned.
So a while ago, whelps were not really something that was done, right? I mean, you would go in there and you'd get a piece of yours so that your guys were happy, even if you lost your whole fleet, but you would get something.
Right. Now you can try to do that. You can just barge into the enemy and they might just wipe you out without taking any losses. Like, there's the hard counters, there's the nullifiers, there's the ability to move quickly around the grid. It's some of it's players maturing in strategy and ability and skill at the fleet commander level, but a lot of it's the mechanics. Like, I feel like Fozzie is an advocate for small gang PvP, and that kind of bleeds into null warfare quite a bit, and it just makes it suck because there's no losses on one side sometimes. I'd like to see everyone walk in and the winner still loses half their fleet. Like, that'd be the ideal scenario.
I think it's also this, like the 300 syndrome, where guys want to come in with like 5 guys and wipe out 200 and feel good about it. Like they're demigods or something. Like that must be the rush on the other side.
I get that, and I even support that to some degree. It's just you should have to commit. Like if I bubble you, I want to know you're there. Like there should be a mechanic where you are committed to the fight. Like 2 fleets enter, 1 fleet leaves if you've got this stuff. And we were kind of hoping that might happen with those super cap bubble launchers, but those things are stupid and like a waste of a module slot. Like it's ridiculous. So if we're still waiting for that kind of mechanic, I would love to see the Thunderdome fleet fight again now.
So going back to the war and how it affected you guys were invested in many different markets. You only had a little bit of liquid cash, let's say. You see that this nightmare or this thing that's happening, you were already aware of and warned of. By the way, I'm going to segue my own question here. If you guys didn't like the casino model, like weren't you guys building one? And is there a contradiction there at all?
Well, no, like we recognize, so I had what I call the scorched earth. We knew that Casino ISK was going to be a threat. So I had already come up with a plan probably a year ago for how would you combat that threat if it develops. And it was a very simple plan. We were going to make our own casino, and it wouldn't matter if it's shit, and we were going to run it at 0% margin. Like the whole point of the casino, right? No rake, just break even. So we would blow away the profit model for every other casino, because why would you go to any other casino, even if our website sucks more, if the odds are break even?
So kill the competition to keep the edge.
Yeah, like there's no more rake. We would never do it for a profit because we never needed the ISK money from the casino because we make a lot in game, right? So exactly. We would just make it a 0% model for everyone else. Like that was what we were doing. Like that was what was coming.
That's brilliant. This first time I'm hearing that. So you put up the casino as a defensive mechanism to drain the competition.
Well, not the first one. The first one was our test bed to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to make this work? What did we learn? And we learned a lot, and it was actually okay. The reason the first one failed had nothing to do with like how good it was going to be. It was everything to do with the fact that we lost our coder.
Would you have gone so far and even considered doing loss leaders on it?
What was that?
Would you have gone so far and even considered doing loss leaders on a casino?
Oh, absolutely. Like we would have definitely ran it like a negative 100 billion a month or something. No problem. Like that would have been a big deal at all.
I love that. I think just because, the common wisdom is completely opposite of that. But it's so funny to see so many people wrong. That's what cracks me up. So
yeah, there's so many people that like speculate and armchair quarterback. Like, here's what the goons are doing, and here's what they think it's like. No, you need to understand. There's probably any scenario you can think up. We've thought about it a year ago. We know what we would do. Doesn't mean we have the ability to do the response easily because maybe effort or we don't have the right resources or there's too many people taking a break from Eve. And that's one of the other things that happened in the war. That war happened when a lot of our very senior leadership were having either real life issues or real life had consumed them. Like I in particular was not hardly around for the war at all because I'm an executive at a company and I had just gotten dropped into the worst project in the company, like the thing that the CEO gets read into type thing. So
I was
inhaled by that project, and I know Mittens was basically AFK. Like it was pretty bad. A lot of our senior leadership was gone. But
yeah, and that brings on the whole topic of basically what I've been known to comment on is that Goons and Mittens have been claiming that they weaponize boredom, and this becomes a self-inflicting wound because that boredom then led to someone actually being able to monetize on it, and you guys were AFK. So it would not have developed like this if you had not created that much boredom and that much passivity.
Maybe. I think there's a lot of like individual factors you can point to. Like we should have shot SMA in the face early on. Like we wanted to shoot SMA before any of that even happened. Like we had been having discussions like these guys are terrible. Why are they around here? And then when they started getting attacked, we were like, well, we can't shoot them now. We can't shoot them when they're under attack. It'll look like we just abandoned our friends or whatever. So we got to like stick this out and then we'll shoot them. And then obviously you see where it went.
So you're waiting for the war to end so you could kill your ally.
we didn't want them anymore. Like, we had already made the decision they weren't really a good ally. They weren't participating. They weren't defending their own space when they get soft lasered. Like, you saw this when they did it was like the war had just started. Well, it wasn't really even a war yet. It was an incursion, and they decided to fuck off to Delve or something. And so they go down to Delve as some sort of strategy to lure the enemy. I don't know what they were thinking. We're sitting here going, so we're going to defend your Sov for you, and you're not even here?
Well, I always got the impression that they wanted to be as cunning as Goonswarm, and that was what the whole I Want ISK infiltration was about, and the story they were peddling was, look what we did, we have operatives and stuff like that, and it just rang so false that it crumbled really quickly under investigation.
Well, I mean, I don't know what's public anymore, but some misguided, like, lover spat thing, whatever, no, like, that's not infiltration and cunning. That's just some sort of weird.
And you're referring to what Scion is writing in essay forums that's public now about this whole thing actually was something of a lover's quarrel.
Oh, he released that? Oh, I didn't know that was actually released.
That was actually out when the original drama broke. That was mentioned on Reddit briefly in a couple of comments when the whole SMA thing was starting up.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I didn't know if it'd ever been public or not. There's a lot of things that, obviously we're privy to and we have information about that never makes it to light of day. And so sometimes it's hard to determine what made it out and what didn't.
Did you guys?
Can I ask you about what any inside plans from Goons and from your strategy with the war and the casinos and all that stuff? There's a lot of brand issues happening, right? And if we're getting all these alphas very soon, what's the plans to actually pick them up? Because as a name, Goons have been a little bit quiet lately. So is there something big happening soon so we can get some brand value back?
Brand value? Like, what brand are you referring to?
Well, all the interesting drama and big events and Burn Jeter and stuff like that, doing interesting things. The latest thing that happened was basically everyone else rolling over Goons. So if new blood sees that, which is recent history, they might not be as prone to choose to join Goons.
I don't think we see it that way at all because we have so many. You got to remember the talent pool we have that's out there that's just gone for the years, right? That had left. We've got since 06 people that, will come back, or all the Goons that have left through the many different wars or, real life. I think we're going to see a surge of just people coming back just as a social network to reconnect with people. When you don't have to pay, it's real easy to stay in touch with people. But I think as toward the brand, like one of the main things I don't think ever came out, and I think it may have came out, but we made a very conscious decision to torpedo the media about the war, and it had nothing to do with the in-game, war. So and it had everything to do with something one of the CCP employees did that really pissed us off, and so we made a very conscious decision to hurt the media, and to not provide, media, to not provide a story, to not provide drama, to bring players into EVE on purpose.
By torpedoing the media, you're saying that you weren't going to provide narrative for the arc of the story and stuff like that.
Well, not only that, we weren't going to allow there to be a story. Like CCP wanted to hype it to the next big thing and try to get all these players sucked into, and we would have been happy to go along with that if it hadn't been for one CCPer in particular. I'm not going to try to go into it now. It's water under the bridge. I think it's over. But it was a very conscious decision on our part to not participate in media interviews, not give a story, not give battles, not give a big fight that would make a big splash. Like, that was a conscious decision, and it had nothing to do with who we were fighting, and it had everything to do with CCP.
In other words, this wasn't going to be a giant selling point for EVE. You guys weren't going to participate in that.
It could have been. We wanted to when it started, and then some events happened between us and CCP that made us go, oh, yeah? Well, let us show you what consequence is.
So we'll deflate this opportunity for you.
Yeah, we're going to pop this little marketing bubble you're about to have. And remember this next time you decide to open your mouth. Like, that's what happened.
Oh, that's interesting. But would you say that TMC then, because I was news director, or I am news director there, and at the time, we just couldn't get anybody to write for it. So this was invisible to me.
Yeah, like I think it's not about the writers, it's about the story. Like it's hard to get somebody to write about something that isn't really happening. Like the dirty little secret of the war was there really was no war.
I know.
There was no big fights you could point to or anything. It was more like us going, hey, we're going to do this, guerrilla stuff for a while. We like it. It's fun. Our guys are having fun. And then eventually our guys are like, hey, we want to go rat it up a little bit. I'm like, okay, we're going to go Delph. I mean, it's an oversimplification of everything that went down, but that's kind of how it went down.
Well, it kind of felt like, okay, there's you guys sitting on this mountain, and now this horde is coming to take you off the mountain, and you guys walked off the mountain. And
yeah, we're like, peace.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of the directors who want to fight forever because it's fun. Like, you could pick your fights. You didn't really care if you had to show up for the timer. You could let the enemy show up for timer and blue ball them, and then you could go fight them or drop them on the way home, or you could do all these things. And we had great participation. Like, a lot of our allies immediately just cascaded or packed up and ran off, like FCON or whatever, like just bitches, right? But we always knew
they made deals to get out. Right?
Yeah, a lot of our allies, we always knew were baby back bitches. We knew that. Like they weren't able to stand on their own. We were always having to run their stuff. They were always just fucking the football, right? Well, so it wasn't some like epiphany that we're like, oh man, half our tigers. Like, no, come on, we knew that. It was us fighting to the bitter end, and we were the only alliance there at the end, pretty much, that still had numbers showing up every time. We still had participation. I mean, that's what Goons like. But eventually, even if the alliance has wealth, even if the alliance can still fight wars, indefinitely, doesn't mean the line member doesn't want to go make their IST for their Plex, for their sub, and stuff like that. And that's one of the other things that's going to make alphas so interesting is you're not really going to be able to, if a guerrilla force truly wants to just stay a guerrilla force, you're not going to be able to do anything about it because they're not going to have any income generation needs if they just want to stay alphas. So I'm hoping there will be a few Viet Cong style outfits that spring up out there and never go away. I think that would be fun for you.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting. As far as the line members inside of Goonswarm, like what do they get out of it? What do you guys provide for them with all this money that you guys have in investments?
Almost, we make it rain. So, the dirty little like internal fight earlier, in the previous years was always, Mittens would always try to spend about what we're taking in, right? We would save a little, but, savings beyond a certain point probably isn't useful. You should invest or whatever. So, there's the obvious SRP where we'll SRP stuff in peacetime. It doesn't matter if it was a strategic op, things like that. We give very generous infrastructure so people can, go and do industrial activities like, with the EC release. I'm sure we'll be plopping down mini alliance engineering complexes and rig them and fit them for the line member and say, here you go, have fun. We still have to cover all of the social programs. So like we have SIGs, that we'll give IST to and say, hey, you want to go do this thing? It sounds fun. Here's some funding. We have to pay for Plex for all our GSOL members. We'll give Plex to FCs. We'll say, hey, here's 40, 50, 60 Plex, pay out the FCs, that don't have time to go make IST because they're just sitting there FCing. Cool. Here's some IST. So there's lots of these little entitlement programs where, we fund things that make more fun for our people. So that's generally what we do is just look for something that makes me more interesting for our line members, and then we'll try to throw IST on it. It's not a very complex formula.
All right, because I've heard that like you guys are hoarding the money and your players aren't really getting anything out of it.
No, that's never really been true. I think we've probably been the most generous alliance in nullsec forever. Like yeah. I can't remember a time when I've seen an alliance more generous than we are.
Yeah, I would say one of my friends has recently joined GSF, and he's quite newish in EVE, and he said, yeah, the forums and the guides for newbies and the just level of help that, the ships and the skill books and the information available to new players is way better than anything else he's run into in any of the newer corps in EVE.
So
we try to make it easy, and we also have 10 years of history of documenting things, so we have a pretty big knowledge base.
Is that also, like, in contrast, we have, like, Tissue, right, which inherited a bunch of money for the war, and it kind of went up to the top levels, and supers were bought for friends, and people didn't really see the benefit of it. So that's, you guys aren't anything like that, because it seems like it's weird, but when these giant alliances like PL and NC and let's say Tissue get a bunch of money, that money is kind of held for, I don't know how it's held actually, but supers, there's supers buying programs for people, but you have to qualify, and I don't know if that's just friends in some cases, but it seems like it's people they trust that are going to stick around to use that super with them.
Yeah, we did that years ago, where we when we were building up for the BTAC-R, where we had the most supers and everything. We had spent years spending trillions of IS buying people Titans and buying people supers, like directorate members and trusted members, things like that. Corp CEO stakeholders that have representation in Illuminati, things like that. So we had spent many years building that same kind of infrastructure. We just don't have the need to buy anyone Titans anymore. We have so many. Like people like say, oh, well, you can't face PLNC. It's like, yeah, we can actually. It's them plus everyone else. Like we have more supers than any other one alliance in EVE by far. It's just if the whole rest of EVE, brings their supers, then you got a problem. But yeah, we had the same program. We just don't spend money on that anymore.
So really, it's kind of funny. It seems to me that the group that needs to be a coalition to defend themselves is not actually you. It would be NCPL.
Yeah. No, they cannot take us. Just NCPL cannot take us. Not even close. It's not even going to be a fight. But with everyone else, that's the fight.
So you could even take NC and PL together.
Easily. Look at the numbers. It's not even close.
Interesting. I feel like my face just got slapped with a glove, but okay.
That's why they always have to have the meat shield. That's why they have to have Horde. That's why they had to have test. They need the meat shield. And then they bring the high-end strategic assets. But we bring both within our same alliance. Like that's our secret. We've always been a very mixed force doctrine, right? A very integrated. We have subs, tons of subs, and tons of supers, and tons of capitals. And we can bring all of those. Whereas other alliance tend to be able to, they can either, like PL, they'll either bring a couple hundred men in subs, or they'll bring all their supers. You don't really see them do both. If they bring the supers like a big blob, you'll see them using someone else as a meat shield. And that's fine. I mean, it's not disparaging against them. It's just that's how they're structured. And they're a much smaller alliance.
Especially now that supers take a lot more management to actually use, right?
Yeah, you're not going to have a guy multi-boxing 3 supers. And if he is, wow, props to him. Respect. And doing a sub and a super right now, like that's a level of autism I just can't get behind.
Right. Yeah, that's it's gotten tough, and I think it has impacted these alliances where people used to be able to do three guys, a Titan, a super, and a conventional or a subcap.
Yeah, you're going to probably start seeing Pony Express type strategies, be more prevalent, as people free up characters.
Well, you guys do have also a meat shield. Well, I don't know if that's a meat shield, but you guys have not Horde, you have Karma Fleet inside of Goonswarm.
Yeah, we always have wanted the Mega Alliance concept. So I had been advocating for no allies for, 5 years. I'm probably the one goon that you'll find in leadership that says, fuck allies, I don't want any. Because it's not efficient. Not because I don't like them personally, or not because I don't think they can be valuable. None of that. It's just because of the way the mechanics work in EVE, you need everyone in one alliance. Like it's just the way things work. It's more efficient. All the mechanics allow that one alliance to be able to defend their space, to build up their space, to generate economic value from their space. And when you start mixing alliances, that's when it gets a little hairy. And there's just no reason to. There's effectively no limit on an alliance. So why would you be in multiple alliances except for personalities that just want to remain in power, right? That's kind of the nutshell.
Is that something that's been discussed at the CSM at all? The whole dynamics and tools and features for stuff like that?
I don't know that at the CSM. I've written an article about it on TMC before a couple times, where command and control is a big problem in EVE. Right? There's a minimum amount of people you need to run an alliance, and that's what I call like the minimum CNC level. Right? That's a problem because that means you're only ever going to have at this point in EVE's life cycle a handful of really good alliances because no one else can muster that much command and control in a single place. They haven't amassed those players over the years, and now that we're in this kind of part of EVE, where I'd say midlife of EVE, or, just past middle age, you're not going to be able to amass those people easily again. Like there's a critical mass you need, and until you have it, you can't get more. And if you don't have it, you can't get it anymore, right? It's a chicken and the egg. So these alliances like PL and NC and us, we have it, and no one else really does. Like, I would tell people, take a moment and look at the number of alliances you think could run a war on their own. There's only two. It's us and PL.
Steve,
Like, they have enough to
I'm
manage
reading
both.
chat,
Even NC,
right?
yeah, even NC can't run on their own. They need PL.
I was just pointing it out because reading chat, they keep mentioning the whole socialism aspect of Goons and the organizational levels and stuff like that. And basically, if I'm not entirely mistaken, some of the features that CCP have neglected and ignored for over a decade now are the things that might be even more capitalistic, right? So things like top-level taxation and player-to-player and business-to-business billing and interactions economically. And all these things you guys managed to just internalize, and that basically gave you the huge edge because there was none of these things possible. And you can go all the way back to Tiger Transdimensional and the Big Blue's attempt to do capitalism and move into null and populate it with neutrals. But it's not possible with the features that we have. And it's just been discussed many times, but it's never moved further than that.
Well, it's not possible unless you have a lot of out of game tools like we did. So yes, we were the only ones that had a true null economy in deck, and now we do in Delve. It's a pale shadow of what it was in deck still. We haven't built it up. We've had a huge economic surge in the other areas that we were really bad in deck, which is interesting. It's like we flip-flopped our economic model. But yeah, like I tell people, everyone says, oh, Goons are socialists. Sort of. We promote a huge degree of capitalism. We have a lot of internal economic opportunities for people. We kind of subsidize their ability to make ISK with Alliance ISK, whether with infrastructure, with really low taxes, blah, 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 blah. So, and we teach people, here's how you go and exploit this space to the fullest, and here's what you make, and here's what we're going to take, and you're still getting a great deal. So what we do is we kind of call it benevolent capitalism, where we tolerate capitalism all the way to the point where it hurts the alliance. If it hurts the alliance, then we step in, but that's very rare. Like it might happen once every couple years where we have to kind of squash somebody because they're doing something that, isn't very harmonious with the social structure. But yes, all our main income of the alliance is a very socialist model, space socialism, but it only works because we're an autocracy and we're a meritocracy, and it's a very heavy top down. You only need 10 really strategic people to pull something like that off. Luckily.
Because the organizational strain is not something that CCP has given us any tools for, right? So all the benefits that you guys had from very early on being extremely good at organizational stuff, and it's something that I don't see in many of the other big entities in the game. That's why you kept having that extreme edge, because you have the people, the manpower, the tools in-house to handle all that organizational strain, right? And of course the logistics and stuff like that. It's not possible as things are now to outsource a lot of those things as an entity in E.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. If you're a smaller entity that doesn't have, literally a team of IT administrators, literally a team of real life, executives and lawyers and things like that running your alliance, yeah, you're probably screwed. And I've been, harping on that with CCP, is that the barrier is too high right now. I'm not saying I'm advocating for a specific fix.
I'm just saying that you guys internally can manage all your economic stuff and payment things and stuff like that. So, but something as simple as the fact that in-game, when I rent something from an NPC, I get a bill, right? And I pay the bill, and I can set it to actually automatically pay the bill. But something like that is almost impossible, pretty straining if I want to do that as a renter in null.
Yeah, like we have those systems, and I'm sure other alliances have those systems, but they're all based on API data like that. But yeah, if you're average Joe Blow, yeah, completely, you're not going to set something like that up. It's just not within reach. I don't see that changing anytime soon either. Like I don't see CCP making some sort of data warehouse for people to consume from within the client.
No, but even something as simple as a billing feature that we can use between each other, or something as simple as, I don't know, a PayPal feature on the new mobile app or things like that. Something to make it more convenient to have dealings with other entities, and especially now that the casinos are gone, that means that for meta services or media stuff, there's no way to actually get any revenues from that except donations, and that's really a bad model, which reality and real life economy have proven many times.
Yeah, maybe the mobile client will change that. I think it probably has the possibilities to do that in the future. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, is all I'm saying. Like, I support the ability for smaller groups to have in-game methods to enable them to do things that we do at scale because we have out-of-game systems. I just don't see anything like that on the horizon. That's a pretty complex ask. I mean, you're being able to pay people with your app, fine. That's probably a low barrier. I think we'll get that within a year, right? But everything else, gets technically kind of challenging.
So this game really will always have the advantage of people who are professionals leveraging their knowledge into the game.
Oh yeah, that's never going to stop. I mean, there hasn't been a time in EVE where that hasn't been true, especially when it comes to things where CCP has mechanics or features that only those people can figure out how to exploit fully. I'll use a pet peeve of mine. The recent log server stuff. That stuff was so broken, it was retarded. And it doesn't seem like anyone at CCP even knows why it was rolled out, but it persisted for a long time, and it was a major crutch for some groups, like PL and like ourselves, we used it too, where it gave you enormous amounts of free intel for just being cloaked on a gate. Like, it was retarded. And finally they woke up and removed that. But if you're some Joe guy without coders and, people debugging, the EVE client, you're never even going to know that world exists, to know that people know your fit the moment you warped out the gate, and they know everything you were flying with, automatic intel streaming to like some other app. You wouldn't even know that world exists. You'd be chased and killed, and you have no idea why, right? That sort of thing I don't like in EVE. Like, I don't want there to be a completely unlevel playing field with the average dude. So those kind of things do need to go.
That's wild. I didn't even know that stuff existed.
Yeah, I don't run just finance. I also run CARPA, which is like our coding think tank group. Mm-hmm. So I have access to, things that I would say are borderline exploits sometimes. I mean, they're not exploits, but they're definitely abusing mechanics to the limit. And, hopefully CCP will always continue to fix those things that are that egregious. And they come up from time to time. And players will try to downplay that they ever existed later. Sphere being a very popular example, but they did exist. And, it's not like one alliance had it, multiple alliances had it. They just don't say anything. It's usually one alliance that gets popped using it, and then everyone else is like, whoops, well, we shouldn't do that anymore.
So where does this media empire fit into this equation? Is Imperium News part of the Imperium and the whole infrastructure that you have, or is it an external company?
Kind of both. Like, it's an external. So it started very much external. It started to where it was very much at arm's length. There was almost no, collaboration between the two or anything. And it still, for the most part, is that way. It's kind of an independent entity, but we see it as more our social group that can persist through games. So, like, one of the things people don't know is a lot of the Goon leaders played other games before together. Like, EVE is not the first time. And so Goons tend to bounce from game to game, but EVE has become our home game, like, where, we might play other games together, but we always kind of stay together in EVE. It's kind of our home base. Maybe that won't always be true, but the Imperium to us is sort of this transcendent group. It isn't just about EVE. It's about having a group of people that are really, really good gamers that play games together. Because just because I'm good at EVE doesn't mean I wasn't good at all these other games. Like, I was always leadership in other games. I've always been really good at game. If you're a gamer, the game almost doesn't matter. Maybe with the exception of FPS where it's Twitch skills, but even that, a lot of us really, really good at. So if you find a group of gamers that are really, really good and make you enjoy games and make you better because you're all good and make you roll over noobs, right? You're going to stay with each other. And that's what the Imperium is really about, is having a group of people that if you join them in another game, you're probably going to be good in curb stomping people in that game too.
So it's all about rolling over the noobs.
Yeah, it's all about fucking bitches, basically.
Always has been, always will.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the game is about. Like, we're here to have fun. We're here to scratch an itch. If we're all sociopaths and we just want to scratch that itch, so we're better people in real life, great. Let's stay together and do that.
Lift the veil for some of the whole cultural thing inside Goons and the history and where it's moving, especially now with the fact that we're coming up on 15 years of EVE gaming, and we've just had that whole touchy-feely week where everyone is basically creating, I don't know, a blue layer cake where we don't want to fight each other. What are we seeing with Goons? Where are they moving culturally, and are they still very closely connected to EVE, and is it because, well, that's created by Goons? Well, I'm not saying the entire EVE game is created by Goons, but the players in EVE is the only thing that's actually content in the game. So what does that mean for the future and new generations?
I wouldn't say our culture is substantially changing. I would say our culture is abstracting from EVE to some degree. I don't think that a lot of us now, whether we play EVE or not, they would stay on Jabber, or they would stay in our chat channels, and they would still talk, because you might run into each other, you might pop in from time to time. But our culture much more now is, we're all older, right? We're all, approaching midlife. A lot of us have families and careers. It's just turning to a little more casual. But that kind of fits in with the way EVE's going, right? You're going to have this world where alphas are very casual, they're not paying, and then a war breaks out, or a series of big fights break out, and maybe people will drop a Plex, go to Omega, and then have fun. And I think you're going to see EVE be spikier. You're going to see periods of relative peace and quiet and nothing happening turn into
so old school
a spike load.
Well, because generationally we are hitting grandparent age, really. People that started playing EVE back in the day are now reaching a point where they might actually have kids that are having kids. So it's a very different place for what you might say is the content creators like yourself and the Goons executive brands, right?
Yeah, like a lot of us now, we might hang out together on vacation, or people might be in business together with TMC, or people might have side gigs together, or people might be getting, like, we have a lot of people to get each other jobs, right? We know each other in game, and we know each other good at a certain skill set, maybe an IT skill set. So you'll see people hire other people in real life, and support networks and networking. It's more I think Mittens described it once in Cancun as the internet mafia. Like, that's effectively what Goons are now. We're just like kind of the internet mafia, where if you're a made man, you're kind of a made man in whatever game it is, and in real life, if you need help, right? That's kind of what it has become.
But isn't it turning a little bit outwards, right? The inward-facing culture, it seems to be getting porous.
I think that's been happening probably for 10 years, right? Where I've always been an advocate for ingest as many bodies as you can, sort through them and find the good ones, and discard the ones you don't want or disruptive or whatever. I think that it's just, you have much more consolidation at the top now. You have much more stability, where a lot of the names at the top have been around for a very long time. And now everyone recognizes that, hey, it isn't necessarily just about EVE. It's about, hey, you need to have a gaming community. If you're going to be a gamer, if let's say you're at 40, I'm not there yet, but let's say we're all 40 years old.
Quickly say that.
Yeah, not quite there yet, not far. You're probably going to be gaming another 20 years. Maybe you'll be gaming in your old folks' home in your diaper. Who knows? But if you're a gamer and you've been gaming for 20, I've been gaming for 30 years, right? Yeah, probably since I was like in my single digit years. You're going to probably game the rest of your life. So you might as well find a community that can support you in that, and you have fun hanging out with, and and you can trust, because trust is something that's hard to earn on the internet. And so if you find a group you can trust, and you can give them 10 years worth of gaming assets, they're not going to run off with them, then that's something you can't buy.
So it's kind of you're in this for life.
Yeah, like I'm one of the OG goons, right? I've been here since the very, very beginning. There's not that many of us left. But again, I was leadership in previous game. Like it's not about Eve, it's about playing with goons. We're playing goons in space, we're not playing Eve. And it's kind of a cliche, but it's true, and it's always been true.
Okay, so as a goon, and if you're one of the original goons, like what is it about you guys that gets called toxic all the time? Do you guys really mess with the public?
I guess because people don't like it when others can have fun at their expense and clearly don't have remorse for it. Like I make no secret that I'm here to inflict suffering. Like that's why I play Eve. Like I want to scratch an itch and I want to inflict suffering on many people. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's healthy. That's what gaming's for. But other people, they just want to mine rocks in space and talk and play LARP in space or something and talk about My Little Pony and their furry friends or something. Like, okay, we're not going to be playing the same game, but don't get all butthurt when we gank you.
So, well, let's look at that for a second, and it's very comical. You're here to create pain and laugh and enjoy that as you do that for other people. But you're also here to build, which is kind of funny because that's you've built systems, you've built relationships, you've built capital.
Yeah, we're empire builders. Like, I mean, that's people ask like, well, how do we play Eve? Like, what's our modus operandi? We are empire builders. That's what we do. That's why you always see us immediately reassemble. Like we might have to. This is what the fourth time we've moved. I don't know. This is like the fourth time we've lost our space, and deck was like 3 times longer than we've ever lived before. It was crazy. But we always rebuild. We always reassimilate, and you always see us reconstitute ourselves because we have a great command and control. We have a great culture. And we have the people that are capable of doing it. So, people always say, what's it going to take to kill goons? It will be goons killing goons. It won't be an external force.
They've done it before, right? They unplugged themselves by like not paying their SOV bill. And
yeah.
But
I mean, when we leave Eve, like to kill goons from Eve, it would take goons deciding, Eve's not fun anymore. That's the only way. Right.
Well, that's interesting because that may be a bellwether to like a failing game, which would be really bad. So I guess if that prophecy were ever to come true, it would be a bad sign for the game.
Oh, if you ever see us leave Eve, Eve's dead. Like, Let's be real here. Who's been the major content creators for the last 5 years that you see in the media? We're always in that article. We're always on one side or the other. If we go, Eve is never going to have a very good Twilight. I'm not saying we're going or anything. I'm not saying Eve's dying. Well, I'm not. Eve is dying. But I think alphas are going to rejuvenate Eve. But yeah, if you ever see us disappear, you should cry.
Well, yeah. So how much do you think they're going to rejuvenate? How big is this?
I think it's huge. Now, the trick is getting all those people that have left Eve in the past to know about alphas. That's the trick. Obviously you can do mass mailing campaigns, things like that. We're going to try to spam our people at their email addresses too. Say, hey, come back. Here's a link. Blah blah blah. That's going to be the thing. Is that I would do a very heavy, aggressive marketing campaign to get those people back. I think it's a big differentiator. I think you're going to see a huge population surge. I think you're going to see a great deal of people out there try Eve that may have never tried it before because it's free to play. Like, what's the risk? Whereas a trial is a little intimidating. Like, you got a gun to your head. There's a date that you should pay by or your game's over.
I think people start playing Eve and they're like, whoa, this is really complicated. I'm not going to do it in 30 days, so I'm stopping after 2 hours.
Exactly. I think alphas is going to change all that. There's no rush. There's no gun to your head. You can drop it. You can come back. And you might see people drop it 2 or 3 times before it sticks. I know I was in Eve beta. Didn't stick. I came back after launch. Didn't stick. It wasn't till Goons in space that it stuck for me. So third try's a charm. But if I hadn't had Goons, I would have never stuck with Eve either. Like, it's not a good game for solo orders.
Yeah. It is a great game for empire building, though. And part of the joy that you guys get out of it is empire crushing. Or these guys that build little empires compared to you guys. Which I thought was pretty interesting because that's an idea I could get with. The idea that you guys were insurgents for a long time. I mean, when you guys started, you were too small to be a heavy duty power that you are now. So you guys really just kind of shat all over the game, and that was the whole first part of the first act for Goons, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, you got to remember, we were the littlest guy, the newest alliance on the scene. We were like brave newbies, smaller. And imagine like NCPL and all the major forces coming and shitting on you at once. Like, so Bob came and they were by far the predominant force. They brought their friends and they camped us into our NPC station, or they tried to. And we immediately responded with, oh yeah, well, we're going to roll a whole bunch of characters called VCBs and go do what we want and torment you anyway. Oh, and then we got these friends that are going to let us sleep on their couch. So we're going to go over here, and which meant we had a holy war for the next 4 years, 5, 6 years, really, before we killed them. And we killed Bob. Like, yeah, they may have won a battle and made us run over to Innsmother, but we kept coming and coming and coming. And that's what we've done always in Eve. Like, there's never been an enemy we're not going to come for. There's no one that we fear. Like, there's no one in Eve that can take us head to head. So why wouldn't we just keep coming? And that's what's fun about Eve, is the nemesis, or the payback, or, you know, just making sure that the things you're doing to build your empire further the military goals, right? And so we'll have internal arguments over what system are we going to live in and what systems are capital, and everyone's arguing from a place of what makes us the strongest, right? And everyone's right from their individual perspective. You just have to determine what's right from an overall perspective.
So is there any daylight between you and some of the people that left Goonswarm, the old guys that were disgruntled? And I would say, like, your former rear admiral,
Which one was that?
Was it Blarf McTaggart, I think? Or Endy, who was head of spies? What's that?
What do you mean by daylight?
Like, it seems like a lot of the complaints they had were too big, it's boring, the guys are bored, we're going somewhere else. Or the same things that you were saying about pre-war Goons.
Yeah, like, I think on the allies, I think a lot of us agree. I never liked allies. Never did. I understood the need for allies. Don't get me wrong. In Dominion Solve, allies were definitely a thing. In Phoebe Solve, they're not really. And so we had a coalition that was an amalgamation of things that were due to previous mechanics, not that were required by the current mechanics. But everything else, like, Indy and I hated each other. Like, I always trolled the shit out of Indy. I was a vile rat guy. So what people don't know about the internal politics is Indy always wanted to be seen as the number 2 of Goons. He never was, but he always wanted to be seen that way. And Vile Rat was the number 2 when he was around. And so you either a Vile Rat guy or an Indy guy. And there wasn't very many Indy people, and I was a Vile Rat guy. And Indy and I never got along. Blarf and I did. Blarf was okay, but he was a furry. So
what's a furry?
Oh my God. You don't know what a furry is? Why are you on the internet?
I don't know what a furry is. Is that an animal?
Yeah, you can explain that one, Arith.
Oh, never mind. Somebody else knows. I think it's a character that looks like a fox.
No, I'd really like to hear Arith talk about furries. That sounds like
right. Sorry.
But yeah, Blarf was cool. But I mean, at the end of the day, him and V, and they just found real life. It wasn't like they were already gone before they were gone. Like, that's the thing about Indy and all those guys that schism. They weren't playing. They weren't even a part of leadership anymore. They weren't doing anything. And they only ran off in a huff when they got kicked from leadership channels because they were inactive. Like, that's what precipitated all of that. Like, so it wasn't like they had these ideological arguments or whatever. It was, no, you went idle, and then you got butthurt when Mittens kicked you from the channels. So, and then you went and rage quit. Like, okay. So that has nothing to do with ideology.
So it's like dead branches falling off a tree.
Yeah, we do this all the time. I think at that wave, I think we kicked something like 10 people, and only 2 or 3 went Nazi about it and got called crazy because, oh my God, you know, we should be friends and be able to hang out once we get to a certain level, which should, you know, we should always be that level. It's like, no, we're a meritocracy. Like, you either keep producing or you get booted down, like you get busted out. Like, it's just how it is. And it's not because we're mean, because you have to have people that are the people doing work or the people actively involved in Eve that are making the decisions. You can't have an echo chamber where it's half a dozen people that aren't even playing Eve anymore setting policy or setting strategy. It doesn't work. You end up making very bad decisions, and you just piss off the people that are actually active around and active. Like, you got to give the people doing the work the power.
What about DJ, who came back and was saying, I'm going to create a place for Goons to actually have some fun? That was he said that was always his intention. What'd that look like to you?
I remember DJ. Like, I knew DJ very well before he went off to CCP, and he was never the I'm going to lead Goons to fun guy. He was the raging alcoholic guy, or the guy that would just I remember like when he schismed a whole section of goons off because he couldn't like swallow his pride for a moment, or when he stole some guy's Titan back in the day, or just I like DJ as a person, I think, but he was never like this leader he makes people out to be. He tries to pitch himself as the guy that led Delve from the great Sov Whelp into the deck promised land. It's like, well, kinda, but not really. It's more just, hey, TCF, oh, I'm going to CCD buy. Like, what the?
What was interesting to me is I always thought it was him that said, Delve's Sov is dropped, we're moving everything. Like, nobody stays here, we're moving everything. But that wasn't his idea that came to him. He admitted that was somebody else's idea.
No, like, people don't understand. Like, I get to take a whole bunch of responsibility for how that played out. So there was me and two other guys, Boo Jenkin and Ford Kroller, I think. That Cartoon was gone. So Cartoon was on his honeymoon. Neart was our finance guy at the time. He was AFK. And they were the two guys responsible for paying bills. So that's why the drop. Like, so one's on his honeymoon, whatever. So before Cartoon can get back, I make a poll in our forums. I stir up the whole mob, me and Boo and Ford, against Cartoon. So he comes back to a total shit show. Everyone calling for his head. Get the fuck out. And I knew that he was probably going to run off with all our shit. But that's what goons do. Like, it was so good of drama that we can't not do it. Like, we had to do it to ourselves. And so he came back to a total shit show where the whole directorate's trying to save it, where he doesn't go fuck goons. And you have me on the other side trying to make him go fuck goons. And he eventually went fuck goons because we just trolled him right out of the alliance. And so, yeah, that's part of our history. That's what people don't really know is we probably could have recovered and Cartoon could have led us if we had given him a chance. But he was a terrible CEO and a series of terrible CEOs in that period of our time because no one actually wanted to be CEO then. It was kind of like, oh, do I have to take it? Okay. And that was one of those two. And him and Zappa were the same way. And that's why that part of our history is kind of a dark one because we didn't really have any good command and control. Like, we were in flux at that time. We had lost all our old heroes and we didn't really have any new ones.
So can we expect some drama over Christmas?
Of what?
Can we expect some drama over Christmas?
No, like we're extremely stable right now.
So the only way to get drama is if you, I don't know, set everyone red and start some huge fight.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect any real drama. I mean, maybe, not from Goons. I don't think you're going to see anything from us for a while. Like, we're empire building right now, and we've spammed a zillion citadels, so it's truly stupid now.
Actually, put up a keep star, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to see any vengeance or anything from Goons over the whole.
Oh, of course. I mean, we always get revenge. Like, that's a given. It's just we do it when it's most effective. Like, what I was trying to tell, who was I explaining this to? I was explaining this to somebody in our leadership. They were always like, man, do you think like someone could have killed us with enough ISK? And I'm like, yes, if they had enough ISK and they had chosen the right time, ISK could be a deciding factor in killing Goons. But they didn't choose the right time. Like, you can't do it when someone's at the top, and you can't do it when someone's bunkered down. You got to do it at that perfect drama moment, like when they're schisming anyway, or they're internally failing. Like, there's a method and a recipe to a failure cascade, and it seems like only us understands it. I don't know why that is, but no one else seems to really get it. And so I don't think you're going to see any drama. There's really nothing external we're worried about right now.
So you don't think there's going to be some sort of, arming organizational wise on the outside of Goons and all players coming back in and stuff?
I think, if I can butt in, I think one of the things that might actually drive conflict, perhaps not in the way Caleb and Arith are thinking of, will be the trade network that's going up throughout low with the keep stars. I think there is the potential for that to start some big fights in the not too far future.
It won't be that. It's going to be ECs because they drop so much shit that if you can find an EC building a lot, which is easy due to the way indexes can be scouted, with free intel from across the map, you're going to probably see some big fights over that where null's going to show up, not necessarily to fight each other, but you would if you're all on grid anyway. When those ECs start really cranking and you've got, $500 billion in build and an EC, and someone comes and blows it up, that's going to be fun. It's going to be a big space pinata.
So we're talking about engineering complexes. Those are going to be generators of conflict.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like Citadels aren't going to be the content generators. Like no one wants to fight over a Citadel. Citadel's a good stager, but EC is going to have ISK in it. And this is what people are going to come and shoot.
What about the fact that a lot of the Care Bear industrial people have been bitching over the fact that this whole move actually kills solo industrialism?
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. They're just smoking crack, and they're a shitty industrial.
They view it.
Like there's like I'm a solo industrialist, I guess. Like I'm probably one of the largest producers in Eve, like hands down, not even close. And this is only a help. Like I don't understand why anyone would complain about ECs. Like I understand a little bit of the complaints about fuel block usage. Like okay, fine, we can that got tweaked, but to say that you can't throw up a small or a large, or sorry, a medium or a large EC, they're so low in price that if you're any kind of industrialist, you can afford one.
Yeah, I think like a large is around 5 billion or so. So yeah, if you're a solo industrialist or you've got a few outs or whatever, or you're a small industrialist corp, you should be able to afford 5 bill for a large EC.
But if you can't, drop a medium then. They're almost free. It's like plexing a character. Like I don't have much sympathy for those industrialists. And if
you always use a public one.
Yeah, like there's going to be a bunch of public ones that are some
varies. Yeah. There's going to be Excels up in high sec, so there's going to be plenty of opportunity for people to use public ECs.
Yeah, like the only thing people are going to like fight over is the indexes, right? You're going to have to migrate due to index, and that's about it.
Yeah, I do think that Lenny's the so-called Lenny's trade network of keep stars dotted throughout low sec might cause problems if the extremely loose coalition of people that are meant to be promising not to attack the network actually that breaks up a bit, then that can cause some conflict as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we never promised anything. We were always going to shoot those things. So yeah. Like I think they'll just die over time, especially if he stays banned, like whatever.
Would it also break the mercenary blue donut thing, potentially?
Yeah, the one in high sec?
To define that's high sec. Mercenary groups are usually allied with one another, so it's hard to hire them against each other.
That's fallen apart now. That's fallen apart in the last month or so. So yeah, that's not a thing anymore. But the low sec stuff doesn't affect the high sec mercs. It's more that the major, with the exception of Goons and Test, the major null blocks have got loose agreements to not get involved with fighting the network. So yes, I don't think that's going to hold together too long.
Yeah, any network near us, we're going to kill it. Like we've internally said that. Like anyone deploys something like that near us, it's going to die.
Why are the mercenaries falling apart? What's the dynamic there?
There was a dispute over territory, over which one was owning or which one was operating in which area of high sec, and one of them thought that the other one broke the agreement, and of course the other side thinks it happened the other way around, and so they started taking on opposing contracts and taking down citadels. And for example, now around Amar, all the Fortizars are down now or reinforced due to this outbreak of mercs fighting each other in high sec.
That's interesting. So going back to something we touched on earlier, and that is the TMC or the Imperium.com. I just wanted to make sure that question was answered for viewers. What's the relationship? You said that it is a business on one hand, but it's also a community endeavor on the other?
Yeah, so you got the business, right? That things need money to run, as all the other Eve sites are now finding out. We had weaned ourselves off what I'll call the CCP tit a long time ago, right? We're not a Eve only site. We have money coming in so the site can be self-supporting. We can also support it with ISK if we need to, for like staff payments or whatever. But it functionally as an entity, it's not the same. It's not Eve. It's not Eve Goons on a website. It's an Imperium website. It doesn't necessarily mean it's strictly Eve News. Obviously, you can see that from the articles. The community is larger than Eve, so we see it kind of an extension of our culture, but it's not Eve Goons necessarily. We don't see it as a political foil. We don't see it as a propaganda machine, like I think we see some of the other websites. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's propaganda pieces on there from time to time, but that's not the focus of the site. The focus of the site isn't to metagame. The focus of the site is to build a community.
Is this another self-defense thing then?
Another what?
Another self-defense, like the idea with the casinos, that you basically use it mostly for self-defense against propaganda and other media outlets amassing of power.
Well, when it first came out, that's what its stated goal was, to be a counter to games media, which was really bad, and it was a way of getting your message out without having to rely on other people writing about Goonswarm.
Yeah, that's morphed over time. Like now, that's table stakes, and now it's much more about, can we build a real community around not necessarily a website, but the whole platform, whether it's Discord or forums or whatever. Yeah, but you don't see that many. Unfortunately, you don't see that many Eve articles anymore, and I don't know if that's because there's not a lot going on in Eve. Sometimes I think about writing because there's a zillion topics I could write on and stories I can tell. It's just a time commitment. That's the problem. It's time, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not really an outlet now for getting a counter narrative out. I suppose we can set a narrative with it, but we do use it to highlight issues we think should come to the attention of the community or come to the attention of CVCP, like we think are broken. To promote discussion about it, to get people thinking about it, and to kind of voice in one coherent place a message, right? Because a lot of times it's very difficult to get any sort of intelligent discussion on, non-communities like Reddit or even the Evo forums. It's something where you've got to have kind of a curated, impartial moderator doing comment scrubbing or things like that nature. And so in other ways, it's that kind of community now.
So you can communicate to CCP now through CSM directly, and you also have Imperium News if you wanted to write an article about a broken mechanic or something like that. And it has morphed over time, as you said. It started out as something to defend your group's reputation with, but now it's about mechanizing the holding together of a community. And now it seems like there's some vindication in this for you guys, because we, and I'm part of TMC, but not part of Goonswarm. You guys have seen the destruction of, the curbing of gambling or casinos as a money-making operation, which is what supported competition, let's put it that way, like EN24 or Crossing Zebras or any other Neocom, any other group that puts out news.
Yeah, when we're the only group standing now with a huge income stream in game and
even
out.
with that, I was having a bit of a talk with Raw and Bad Bobby the other day about the whole thing of compensation and payment for media production and articles, and it's still on a level where it's basically a laughing matter on an amateur level. And I think INN is reaching a point where it's becoming sort of like a semi-professional fourth estate, right? So what's your thoughts on even higher compensation where it reaches a point where people might actually be properly motivated, especially the ones that couldn't give a damn about 250 million?
Is that what it is? I don't know. Yeah, like
it's 300 now.
The price war took it to 300, right? But it's still peanuts, right? It takes like 10 minutes for most high-end people that might have something to say to make that kind of money. So it's still peanuts.
So, Aerith, you don't know how much money you guys are paying out to TMC or
I haven't looked at that in so long. Like I was involved originally in setting some amounts early on. I didn't realize y'all were being paid 250 or 3, whatever the fuck.
300 now.
Like I don't care if we pay $1 billion an article or a couple billion for a good article. Like that doesn't matter.
Can you afford that? Because I'm looking for a raise.
Yeah.
All right.
You tell Mins I said that.
Yeah, I will.
The point was that Raw was pointing out that until it reaches something in the realm of $1 billion per good content, it's really not something that gets you out of bed, right?
Then go ahead and tell him I said $1 billion an article. Like it's fine.
All right, you heard it. For submissions, we'll start paying $1 billion per article. Get your pens ready.
Like I don't know why. I guess I don't know if he knows because he would have. Because we have plenty of income, so whatever.
That's what I was looking for. Is like, how much money does Rome have?
A lot. Yeah. Like we're very
well. It's a scaling thing, right? The higher the pay, the better the quality, the better the potential recruitment thing and brand value creation, and then more revenue, right? So it's not even a bad investment. You could easily defend taking it up to $1 billion, and it shouldn't actually hurt you, right?
No, I don't need to defend it. I think it's just an oversight. It has nothing to do with, I think, what we could have afforded. It's just no one asked, or Mittens didn't think it was an issue. Like, I think if Mittens actually thought, hey, if I pay $1 billion, I'll get more quality articles, he would probably have done that a long time ago.
Do we think Mittens is probably getting pings everywhere now going, yeah, Arith is saying that you're paying $1 billion per article?
Wouldn't matter. He's going to be sleeping. If he gets up before noon today, I'd be shocked.
He won't be up. That's why we... Anyway, I wanted to cut through this because...
My sampling might be a little bit skewed with the type of people that I talk to, but I'm just pointing it out because, of course, you can get newbies to work for peanuts, but all people that have stacks and stacks of ISK, they won't really take the time.
Well, and that's something important because it seems I was just discussing this with other people, and they said, well, probably the reason that there's no writers for things is because we burned through a lot of the talent. Like, they all got in early, they kind of did their thing, they got out of their system, and they no longer want to write. It's too much work. It is a lot of work.
That's what I think the real issue is. Like, I don't think it's ISK. Like, if it was just ISK, he would have changed it. I think it's motivation. Maybe ISK can motivate a few more. Like, I think that's fair. But real talent, even $1 billion, like whatever.
I think one of the strengths of INN is the fact that a lot of the payment is actually in social capital, and the challenge to write for an organization like that. But of course, if that doesn't pay enough, right? If it doesn't feel as if you're part of something that compensates for the lack of ISK, then ISK is a good motivator.
Sure. I have no issue with that.
I feel like we're out of his Arith's wheelhouse, except the money part. So we'll go back.
Well, no, I mean, I know all about the articles and the submissions, and it's just, to me, this is like a non-problem. Like, this is something easier to mediate. Just no one's been looking at it. I think if Mittens or anyone or myself gave it, 15 minutes of their time, whatever, we could solve the article issue.
Well, it might be a problem that I'm not in Goonswarm to kind of see what's going on that side of the curtain. Which I can see, like, wow, there are some shortcomings. Like, I'm not completely whole in the organization to be able to push for things. I did push for some pay raises and stuff like that, but I don't actually understand what's going on the other side of that, and then that would be probably beneficial for the organization in general if I knew more about what's going on in Goonswarm in relationship to TMC. But I am, for the record, I'm publicly, not in their channels, talking about finances and stuff like that. Your cabal is how many people big now?
Just the finance one? I'd have to look. Maybe 10. It's not as big as it used to be. We booted several people.
Yeah, is it still
they went active or whatever. But there's probably only 4 of us now, 5 of us that are truly, huge ISK, active, actively manipulating or doing, market shenanigans at any given time. Most of us are heavily invested right now, sitting on trillions of whatever investment we're in at the moment, like salvage or minerals or goo or whatever.
So are there other cabals out there? Are you in competition with other groups? Or?
Nope. There is no other cabals. It's been a very lonely existence.
There's nobody else like you guys in the finance world of Eve?
No, unfortunately not. We would love that to be true. Like, Tess tried to start up some, what the hell did they call it? I don't even remember what it was called anymore. But it was just a group of industrialists. It wasn't even a group of, like, super Jews, what we call them. Well, that's what we call them. Like, it's because there's like the PVE, right? Which it's not a derogative term, but within Goons, we referred to it as Jewing originally, and now we just refer to it as what do they call it? War crabbing or something now?
Crabbing, yeah.
But then above that, people, so we call those effort people, right? They expend effort, real time to mine, to rat, to do whatever in Eve, right? They do something that expends their time in real life to make money in Eve, right? What we do is we're the thinking ones. We go for that maximum ISK to time ratio where I might only have to speculate, and I'm using air quotes here, a few hours a year. But if that'll churn out $1 trillion plus for a few hours work, great. That's like the best effort ratio in Eve that there will ever be. And so in general, I just try to make, keep it every year being a minimum of 1 trillion made and then call it a day, right? That's very passive. It doesn't require a lot of my time. That way I can invest most of my time in running the alliance. So like 95% of my time will go to that. And only 5% will be spent making, private wealth or whatever.
But you said that you're actually one of the bigger producers. Do you actually produce things?
Yeah, but so I primarily produce one set of things, or it's like 4 things, but it's in one category, but it requires extremely low time investment. So I do it at such huge scale that all I have to do is basically log in, a couple times a month, 20 characters, load all their slots, and then log off.
Wow, you have that all worked out.
Kind of broken at scale.
Have you brought any of these things up in the CSM with any of the CCP devs?
What kind of things?
Well, that there still is these, I don't know if you call it holes, but things that are too easy mode, right? The whole thing about one person being able to scale almost all the demand production of specific items, right?
I brought it up during the alpha conversations, because one of my big concerns is if they don't give alpha production penalty of some kind, you're going to have people like me that just roll 50 alpha accounts full of prod alts. Even if they have less slots, 4 or 5 slots is still plenty of slots.
And the opposite is also true, right? That if there's no motivation to produce for alphas, it's useless, right? Then you're basically making them handicapped from the beginning. So it's more the thing that they need to shift things into active stuff where it's demanding that people are actually sitting there at the computer doing something. And labor strain has not been what they've been doing.
Like, I'd rather see just like what I pitched for was like, I would like a 1% penalty on an alpha. Like, not enough to matter, but just enough to know, hey, I'm probably okay producing on Omega still. I will if I'm at scale, I'll still make up that Plex cost in that 1% over a course of a month. Like, you don't want the optimum path to be don't sub your production alt because you have Plex costs, right? That you don't want that to be the scenario, because then all the major producers are going to go, oh, I can save 10 or 20 billion a month on account costs by just rolling alphas. And yeah, I got to log in twice as much, but okay. Like, you don't want that to be the scenario. But I don't want to see Eve go into some sort of click fest to make things like that. That wouldn't be a fun experience. Eve is going more casual, not.
Oh, that's a big statement. So Eve, you think is going more casual, or you don't want it to go more casual?
It is going more casual. I don't think I have a problem with it going more casual, but it definitely is more casual. Like, everything CCP is doing is making Eve a more casual game.
Well, describe that a little bit. What do you mean by that? Because people are getting older, they need more casual because they have more life commitments.
So think about like the average time. I'll use nullsec for example, but I don't want to suggest that it's totally limited to nullsec. In the past, let's say you were in a war with. You were on a weekend, let's say a Saturday morning. You knew the ops that day were going to be a minimum of 6 hours. They usually went 8-10 hours. Like, you'd have a tempo where to accomplish the things you need to accomplish and to bin and solve or whatever, you would spend that entire day. And this could happen 3 times a week. Now you can accomplish everything you need to accomplish from a war perspective in a couple hours. It's faster paced. It's more casual. You have more frequent interaction, but less meaningful interaction. I'm not saying that's a good thing. And you have much more ability to move around the game, whether it's nullified interceptors or T3s, and engage in a way that is convenient for you. And if you just want to move from point A to point B, you can do that with basically complete safety. That's sort of the things I mean where casual is. Little changes to Eve make things a lot easier to engage in a very discrete time box, right? Oh, I have an hour. Boom, I can do an hour worth of stuff and I'm out. I don't need to engage for long periods of time anymore.
Right, and you have these prime windows that says if you're going to show up at this time.
That, and even like, let's say HiSec. With the industry revamp, they made it very easy for you to get in, spend a ton of jobs, get out, very clean window. You can use one command and control character easily, with an alt corp to control all the others' jobs. It's very streamlined. It's very simple. It's very easy to understand. So I think it's only getting Eve's being easier explained to the players through the GUI. It's getting more convenient. And that's a good thing. I think that's the only way it survives.
But doesn't that make the whole trickle-up economic problem bigger?
Potentially, it definitely consolidates more wealth generation capability in the hands of the few, but that's been the case since the beginning of Eve.
And you don't think that's something that should be somehow combated?
No, I mean, the only way to combat that, and like literally the only way to combat that, would be change the effort to ISK ratio, and all that does is punish smaller producers. Like, there's nothing you're going to do to punish a large producer like me that doesn't hurt little ones worse. Right?
Yeah,
Like
Mittens have touched upon that before, but what about putting more value into labor? That's exactly the thing that you're saying that we should not do.
Because all you're going to do is have the big guys slave labor their stuff. This already happens in reactions to a lot degree. We see this internally. All you're going to do is see the people with capital exploit the people without capital. And I've done this myself in the past. I'm guilty. You're not necessarily going to make the effort more valuable, because the thing about production, it's very capital intensive. So even if you increase the effort ratio, capital is still going to be your bottleneck to making big ISK, right? Because let's say your margin's 5% on a T1 item. It's usually about 4%. But let's just say if you're slinging around $500 billion in your production wallet, that you're churning through every month, having the $500 billion, to generate, 25 billion, that's the bigger bottleneck, not finding some guy that's willing to click a few buttons for you or sit at his computer for a couple hours a week and click things for you. Like, that guy will work for peanuts. Like, that poor scrub will work for like 2 billion a week and you're making 25. So I hear your point, but there's nothing they can really do that players aren't going to circumvent, that just probably makes it even a worse caste system than it is today.
Well, what about things like getting a little bit away from the positive feedback, exponential growth of different things, right? Getting some chaos into the system, more RNG, I don't know, more dynamic, well, with the procedural AI thing, maybe we will get something like that. And especially when it comes to things like negative feedback systems. So you don't get that everything just scales up and scales up and scales up, especially for people that are very ASPy, right? They can really just hack their way through the current system because there's no real chaos, right?
I kind of get that, but the counter argument to that would be PI. So for people who don't know, PI is a system based on what's called spherical harmonics. Like, that's how the heat maps on the planets work. And that's how resources are depleted or rejuvenated, right? Well, we've mathed all this out a long time ago and actually broke down, like, figured out how the code works, like looking at it and seeing how the data is extrapolated. You can figure out how it all works. So that's the system they tried to do with PI. You have a depletion mechanic. Like, if you have too much activity, if you consolidate to all your characters on one planet, you will deplete that planet.
Yeah, but they're not competitive, right? There's no real PvP in that aspect.
I think they were supposed to be, but they never got there.
Yeah, but it never even really panned out in that regard, even in the shallow regard. Like, it never even did anything then. We saw cramming hundreds of goons on a set of planets. Now, you could argue that maybe they should have tuned depletion rates or whatever, but all that happened was everyone knows you spread on the planet, you spread your extractors, and never move, because the heat maps are going to move so fast that someone's always on it, right? Things like that. It just, I get where you're going with it, but I don't see there's a way for them to implement that that's not just going to punish the little guy or make it more difficult to understand the mechanics.
So in other words, if you have systems that are constantly in flux so that nobody can just sit on something, then you start to bring in scale, which means if you have 100 people sitting on the same planet, you don't have to change anything because you have the whole planet covered. Just some
Correct.
people are making more than others at that time.
At any given day. Yeah, that's what we had done in DEC.
And that's why you got all these flat things in values of things on the market, right? There's nothing really creates a bottleneck, nothing really creates a strain. It just stays flat, right? And the only thing that moves it is when some big player like yourself goes in and moves it, either with war or with money. And that's just there, in my opinion.
I don't know. Like, you can do that though in smaller markets. I'm not down in some little market, so small industrials can easily manipulate his given market and double his margin or triple his margin for a short period of time. Like, I do it all the time in the biggest markets in Eve, so I know you can do it in some tiny little market. There's always opportunities for margin expansion in any market, especially a producer market in Eve, especially anything that's 2 or 3 tiers of vertical integration before there's a final product. it happens all the time. Is it spoon fed to where some guy can be like, I'm going to insert this BPO and I know it's going to be 7%. Oh, now it's 3%. Now it's 20%. He can do that. It's just not done for him. He needs to actually manipulate the markets, the inputs and the outputs. That's Eve, though. That's what's cool about the economy of Eve. I just think that there's not that many people playing that Eve, unfortunately.
Say that again. There's not that many people playing?
That kind of Eve. So most
kind.
people that play Eve are here to shoot spaceships. Like, I see Eve as a big spreadsheet. So when I log into the game, my client is set up in such a way that it's basically a spreadsheet. I see lines of assets. I see lines, market orders, that kind of thing. I see wallet entries. I don't experience Eve in almost any other way except running from one dock to the next. Like, I don't undock for less than 10 billion is kind of the rule. It's just a different kind of Eve that a lot of people don't see, and a lot of people would say, well, I wouldn't enjoy that. Okay, that's fine, but there are people that do. But it's a part of Eve that doesn't get any attention. You don't see articles about it. You never see stories of exploits about it. It's just this hidden part of Eve, but it's probably the deepest part of the game that I found. And it doesn't stop getting any deeper. Like, the more wealth you get, the deeper it gets. It's kind of fun.
That's why you're here.
Really the selling point, right? If CCP keeps moving it towards some casual thing, or I don't know, League of Legends in space or something like that, right? The whole unique selling point that Eve started out with, the logistics strains, the organizational strains, the raw material bottlenecks, and all these things. If they make these more and more casual, why would I want to keep playing Eve?
Because making them more casual doesn't mean that there aren't bottlenecks. It doesn't mean that there's infinite supply. Like, to your point around market scarcity or whatever, I think is the point you're trying to make. That's drilling platforms. Like, I think you need to wait and see what drilling platforms do to the meta, because I suspect they're going to dramatically change the how things are sourced. I mean, you could. So back when we did, the cartel, right, OTEC. We had a very coherent strategy. I guess it was all my plan, but the plan was very simple. We were going to cartel the supply of something that almost no one else had access to, and it worked extremely well. We took tech to 200K ISK a pop. Today it's at 3K, whatever. Extremely effective cartel, and CCP had to nerf us multiple times. And even though we told them we were only doing it to make them nerf it, it was hilarious. But that was fundamentally a thing about player communities deciding we're going to do this market thing, and we're going to do it on a huge scale. I think you're going to be able to see that again post drilling platforms. You're going to be able to see people say, well, what if I don't send my entire region's output to JITA? Like, what if I can rally my people, and this would be hard, but what if I can rally my people to send it all to my local market? I can then consume those taxes. I can then get the fees on it being sold and the goods coming back to market and those being sold, and more effectively control the price in JITA because I have a much lower market cap in JITA. So then you send your cabal to JITA, and those people influence the prices of that thing. And that's what we do already today. But I think you're going to be able to see it go to a whole other extreme.
I think my point is a little bit inspired by, well, Soundwave used to say that he would have preferred that there was hardly any Titans in Eve. And I think we're seeing Eve develop into a point where in a pen and paper role-playing game, I would usually just scrap everything and start over, because it's not funny anymore when you're riding a gold dragon and you have 3 more eggs in the stable or stuff like that. It's gone totally overpowered, and it's not challenging anymore, at least not for the people that make the game. And they seem to be bored, right? So putting gate cams of Titans, it's like, that was not really the intention. Can we maybe, I don't know, do a rollback or something?
No, I mean, I think your central complaint is the Monty Hall problem. There's always more. There's always more. But that's what's going to happen in a mature game. Like, if CCP, the only thing CCP could do realistically, because they're not going to do a server wipe or their game's gone, right? We're all gone. Like, no one's going to restart Eve. That's a fallacy. But what they could do is introduce deflationary things. They could move Plex to the Aurum shop, which they should do, and I don't know why they haven't done it. 3 currencies is stupid. Let's go to 2 currencies. They could do deflation. They absolutely could do that. It looks like they're trying to do that to some degree. You can see that they're closely watching their ratting income charts and what Titan ratting is going to do, because Titan ratting is off the hook. There's things they can do. I'm not sure that the cure is worse than disease. Like, you don't want to enter deflation, like true deflation, unless the Eve is truly starting to go on that downward spiral. If you think you're about to have a whole bunch of alphas come in, you need it still to be an inflationary economy.
It's just also because of things like wars, right? If you're rolling over PL and they get huge hits, right? If it's just pushing space and then just building new stuff, and there's no real strain to it, no real damage done, then it's not really entertaining anymore.
Yeah, but you got to remember, then there was B-R, where they had to go and lick their wounds for over a year or more because it was such a huge, kick in the nuts. Those can still happen, but yeah, like, there's not going to be a single battle unless it's B-R size that's going to make a null sec power block like me, like our goons, or the PL finance guy and them flinch, right? There's too much is flown around for that. You can do a long period of attrition warfare, which is why I'm advocating for meat grinder warfare to come back. The reason finance doesn't matter so much now is not just because people are rich, but because there's no losses. Like, think about how many big fights are their losses a year. 3 or 4, maybe. That pass, 300 billion or so. And if
there was more strain, if there was some more bottlenecks in production of stuff, and you actually reached the point where more things got destroyed and was put back into the system, you would have something to fight over. And I'm just hoping that structures might bring this into the game. I'm just not.
Yeah, really, that's EC. Like, people are going to fight over ECs because there's going to be a lot of ISK and things that's going to drop. Like, there's going to be a reason to shoot that thing. Like, if you could think a Titan's worth of crap might drop, you're going to shoot it.
Yeah. Well, we're wrapping up the show because we've gone a couple hours, and we did have some technical issues earlier, but we want to yield time. So I want to thank Aerith for showing up. One last thing before we go. I don't know if this is quick, but what do you think of the new Rorqual?
I think it's overpowered as hell, but it's going to be fun to watch. We have a great deal of people in our alliance training like 30 characters at a shot to pilot these things. It's going to be a little silly, but hey, let's have fun with it.
Yeah. What do you think it's going to do to the mineral prices?
Probably exacerbate the fall we're already seeing for the short term. It's not until you start seeing drilling platforms that you're going to see that balance out. For the short term, prices will definitely be depressed.
But eventually, long term should be good because there's so much that's going to be going into these engineering platforms.
Well, it's more that the baseline logistics required to mine in null is going to go up substantially when Goo presumably goes to active mining. And if that's the case, as long as CCP gets the ratio correct, where Goo in some, it doesn't mine enough to where it drops the ISK an hour ludicrous or raises minerals or whatever, it'll be okay. That will reset the prices back, because I think the prices of like Zid and Mega, they probably belong like double where they're. Ideally, I'd like them to see them go back to the old values, because back in the day when we mined, Crocite and Syndicate, you would see Zidrine at 4,600, and mining and ratting were very equivalent back then. And Mega was 6 to 8K, but I don't think they're going to necessarily go that high. But I would like to see them go double or triple where they're at, and if CC gets the ratios right, that will happen. But it's all about sticking that landing, and I don't think they're going to stick it, but I think they might get it close.
Well, that's amazing. After 2 hours, I have a ton of questions that we could go on, but we'll have to have you back sometime to go over those. It's such a pleasure talking with you because Eve doesn't get played at this level by very many people, so it's interesting. Caleb and Reaver, thanks for joining me. Thank you, Aerith. We are now going to continue the marathon with McLeod, who's coming on next. And as far as talking in stations, that's it for us. We will see you